name is Jenny Anchondo, and I'm here each and every week as your host and moderator for the event. So, the plan for today is to get enriched, to get informed, to really lean into some new ideas and possibilities for yourself. So, our topic today is the basics of business lending. Basics of business lending. Now, we have talked a fair amount about lending, but this person in particular has some expertise that I think you're going to find really helpful. Without further ado, let me tell you who we are working with today. He is Tim Coates. He's the Director of Community Outreach and Small Business Lending for Prosperity Bank. So, what he does in that role is actually quite vast, but he does provide small business literacy programs to communities in Texas and Oklahoma. He happens to be in a similar part of Texas as I am, so shout out to people watching from Texas, but I know we have people watching from all over the country. You know, he has 20 years of experience in the financial services industry, 16 years of banking experience, 6 years of commercial lending experience, including SBA lending. So I know that's going to be really helpful for a lot of people who are watching today who are business owners or aspiring business owners, because that makes up a large portion of our group as well. What he has also worked with is this Prosperity Bank Business Masterclass program. And through that, they actually train and educate small business owners through a 6-week program. They do things like teach them how to create their own websites, help them with marketing, help them with social media. So it's a really modern approach. He also helps with formal business plans and projections. Also teaches people how to pitch to a lender. They do have a CPA or tax advisor in that class to help with financial statements and tax returns, but this is a realm that he's very involved in. He also teaches the class on business lending and credit. And gosh, we just focused on credit last week, and it sounds like we'll possibly get a little bit more into it today. So this is part 1 of part 2. I'm glad that you're here for part 1. You'll be able to watch the replay afterwards if you need to take even more notes. And then just kind of teasing ahead to next week, it will be part 2, which is how to complete a loan application and prepare a personal financial statement. Listen, enough from me. I think it's time to get on to Tim and hear what he has to say and hear his presentation. I will be taking notes here along with everybody else, and I hope that you will type your questions in the chat and I will take note of them as well. All right, Tim, take it away.
The required documentation is, for the past 2 to 3 years of business financial statements, past 2 to 3 years of profit and loss statements and balance sheets. It's kind of what we're looking for. And then the current year-to-date profit and loss statements and balance sheets, that's the current business financial statements. Current aging accounts receivable. Now, this will only apply as if you have accounts receivable. So if you have clients that are paying on terms, whether it be 30-day terms, 45-day terms, or 60-day terms, we're going to ask for that aging accounts receivable list. There's a couple of different reasons why we ask for that. We may be able to use that for collateral for a line of credit or a loan request, right? We may be able to use that for collateral, depending on the accounts receivable. If you have good accounts receivable, in other words, your clients are actually paying on time for a long, good history of paying on time. And then but if you have, if you offer products and services and your clients are paying you immediately, or right there when you're providing the product and service, you're not going to have an aging accounts receivable list. So therefore, that's not going to apply to you. For the past 2 to 3 years of business tax returns, I say past 2 to 3 years of business and personal tax returns, we'll just lump that in. We're going to ask for that. And then the current, the personal financial statement and the loan application. And so, and we'll cover these for the next class, the personal financial statement and the loan application. It is really, really important that those are filled out completely and accurately. So there is a high percentage of small business owners, not just coming through us, but really to any institution, that either did not fill out the application and personal financial statement completely or accurately. And remember, this is really your initial look to the lender. So if you're not going to fill it out complete, if you're not going to have a completed application, it's not going to be done accurately. That's not a good look to the lender, right? And so I would encourage you, if you do not understand how to fill out the application or the personal financial statement, you make sure you get a mentor or get that tax advisor or tax accountant to be able to help you fill it out, completely and accurately. Although we are going to go through this in our next class for next week. So I would say you wouldn't have an excuse to not do it accurately and completely, because we're going to go through that next week. So there's some of the additional documents that we may ask for, like if you're purchasing a commercial building, we typically are going to ask for the purchase agreement or the LOI, which stands for letter of intent. That's kind of where our structure starts because we need to see how much is, how much is the purchase price of the building for that example. Another example would be, if you're going to be leasing a spot, leasing the space that you're going to be operating out of, we're going to want a lease agreement or an LOI, letter of intent. Again, that's where our structure starts. If you're going to be purchasing equipment, right? We're going to want invoices or a bill of sale, basically showing us, the total cost of what that equipment is going to cost you. And you're going to want us to actually have that information because we need to have the most up to date and accurate information so we can figure out how much is the need and for what you're trying to purchase it for. So those are some of the examples of the additional documentation. Now you may say, hey, I'm a startup business, so I'm not going to have 2 to 3 years of business financial statements. I just started. I'm not going to have 2 to 3 years of business tax returns. I just started. So obviously, we're not going to ask for that from a startup business. However, you should still have 2 to 3 years of personal tax returns, right? So we're going to ask for 2 to 3 years of personal tax returns. Then we're going to ask for a business plan, right? A formal business plan that will have, typically in your formal business plan, it's going to have what we call your pro forma in there, your financial projections. We're typically going to look for financial projections for about 36 months, so 3 years out, with your assumptions. And then we're also going to want to see in the business plan, who's going to be managing this business, who's going to be running the day-to-day operations, of the business. What's the structure of the business? Is there more than one owner? Are there a couple of owners? And what is their experience? So we're going to want to know their resume or have their resume. And then what's their experience actually in operating this type of business. Also in the business plan, we're going to want to see the structure kind of your request, your sources and uses of funds, if you will. The total project cost. The example would be, hey, I need money for startup costs. Well, what are those specific startup costs? Well, I need 50,000 to be able to actually purchase equipment. I need another 50,000, to be able to purchase inventory, and I need another 50,000 for payroll. To be able to actually pay, 3 people to be able to pay them for 6 months. That's kind of what we're looking for, because what we're looking for in that structure in your source of use of funds is, where do we fit in, right? What's the collateral? We're looking at that too as well. It gives us a clear picture of what your ask is, and then obviously what your capital injection is too, or cash injection, or down payment, right? Capital injection, cash injection, down payment's all the same thing. You'll hear different terms. So I'm using those 3 terms, that way you kind of know what we're looking for. So the business plan can be very, very key. I would say we're pretty much almost always going to ask for a business plan on a startup business. Depending on the lender, depending on the financial institution, I would say a business plan sometimes may be asked for on existing businesses that are over 2 or 3 years. But you need to always have that business plan because the business plan is for you, right? It's not, we're going to ask for it, but that business plan is for you so that you and the other owners or your employees, you have a roadmap of what you're trying to accomplish financially, obviously personal wise, business wise. It's that roadmap that's giving you that. So I'll go to hopefully that explains the required documentation, and I can kind of move to the next slide for everybody. So why does the bank need my financial information? Well, we need to see, obviously, we need to do an analysis of the health of your business. Do you have the capacity, based on the documentation that you're providing, to be able to afford to pay us back, right? Whether it be a loan request or a line of credit request. What type of debt do you need? You always be specific on the purpose for the loan funds. So usually the purpose of the loan funds will explain to us what is the need for the debt, right? Hey, I need to purchase a commercial building. That's the specific purpose. The need for the debt is to purchase the building so I can operate out of it, right? And so it helps us also be able to understand the collateral. What is the collateral? The reason why collateral is important because that's our secondary form of repayment too. If you were to go out of business, how are we going to get paid back? That's why collateral is very, very important. I know y'all talked about the 5 C's. Maria did, I think, with Live Fund a couple of weeks ago. Collateral is really, really important into your loan or line of credit ask, if you will. So going to determination if your business can support the lending request, specifically, I think everybody, well, I think a lot of people understand about debt to income, right? Like you're purchasing a home, buying a car, getting a personal loan or a credit card. Typically, most people understand debt to income. You usually want your debt to income to be as low as possible. And so we'll look at debt to income, but the big thing that we're looking at from the business loan side or the commercial lending side is debt service coverage ratio. You might want to write this down. This is really key. Uh, Shows the capacity based on how the lender looks at it. Debt service coverage ratio. What that ratio is, it's your annual net income divided by your annual debt. I'll say that again. It's your annual net income divided by your annual debt. And there's a certain number that we're all looking for. Every lender is different. But there may be some lenders that want to see 1.5. There may be some lenders that want to see 1.3. There may be some lenders that want to see 1.25. But we're all looking at the same documentation. We're getting this from your financial statements and your tax returns, right? That's how we're calculating that. So to determine if you have the ability to be able to pay us back. So let's say, I'm going to give you an example. Let's say, for instance, and for this lending institution, the 1.3 is an acceptable cash. It's showing that you have the ability to be able to pay us back cash flow. So let's say, for instance, in this example, your annual net income is $13,000. And let's say your annual debt is $10,000. On this example, 13,000 divided by 10,000, that's 1.3. What that's telling us is for every $1.30 of net income you have a dollar of debt. There's a cushion there. If something were to happen, like an extenuating circumstance, like the pandemic, or since we're in Texas, like the Texas snowstorm, nobody saw that coming. You still can afford to pay us back though, because there's a cushion there. So now I'm going to give you another example. So let's say in this other example, we're going to change the net income. Let's say the annual net income now is $10,000, and your annual debt is still $10,000. So $10,000 divided by 10,000, I think all of us know that's 1. That's what we call your cash flow is tight. In other words, for every dollar of net income you have a dollar of debt. If there's an extenuating circumstance that is affecting you, you can't afford to pay us back. Now, just looking at that 1 year, most lenders are not going to entertain that deal because you can't show that you can pay us back. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. So going back to the required documentation, we always look back as lenders. We're going to look back in time, and we also look currently too as well. So we're going to try to, that's why we ask for 2 to 3 years of business and personal tax returns. So we're going to pull that information from your tax returns, the net income. So let's say, for instance, and since we're in 2022, let's say, for instance, 2019, your annual net income was 1.3. And let's say for 2020 was 1 due to the pandemic. And let's say 2021, you recovered, you're back at 1.3. And now currently for 2022, you're at 1.4. That still may be a deal that we could do just looking at a capacity standpoint. We just need to know what happened specifically in 2020 that caused you not to be able to cash flow. You may say, sometimes we get small business, well, the pandemic happened. That's not enough information. We need more specifics. How did the pandemic specifically affect you? You may say something like this. Well, due to the pandemic, due to the mandate, we were shut down for 3 months, right? We have to be able to see customers face to face in order to be able to generate revenue. Since we were shut down for 3 months, we couldn't see customers. Therefore, we couldn't generate enough revenue during those 3 months. And so, and we still had expenses that we were paying for during those 3 months. They didn't go away. But once we were at full capacity, which didn't happen until almost the end of the year, you can see we started to recover. We didn't quite recover, but our debt service was at 1. So we were still paying our debt. We were still paying our bills. And you can see currently, since we're at full capacity for 2021, our debt service is at 1.3, so we're cash flowing, and we're even stronger now for 2022 at 1.4. Hopefully y'all can understand that and see that's what you need to be able to explain to your lender. And then so your lender can explain to the underwriting team or the approvers, if you will, to be able to try to entertain your deal versus just saying, well, the pandemic affected. So hopefully that helps everyone understand how to kind of look at a complete loan package and explain your deal. But debt service is really, really important. The capacity is really important. And this is where it's really important to have a good tax advisor, tax accountant, or CPA, right? So if you're writing off everything on your taxes, showing negative net income or zero, right, for net income, you're gonna have a hard time actually getting a deal, getting a lender to entertain a deal because you can't show that you have the capacity to be able to afford the debt request that you're asking for. And so I wanted to make sure I mentioned that as really, really important capacity is. And so we get the annual net income number again from the tax returns and your financial statements. And then for the annual debt that you have, like if you have business credit cards or if you have a business loan or line of credit, it includes the new debt that you're trying to take on too, the new loan or line of credit that you're trying to take on. It is not the balance of the loans or lines of credit or the credit card or the business credit cards. It's the monthly payments times 12. That's your annual debt. So again, the annual net income we get from your tax returns and financial statements. The annual debt we get it from your monthly payments times 12, the annual debt. And there are loan calculators out there that you can download, actually free apps that you can download, and it can help you understand that and get that information quickly. So I'll go on to the next slide. I know it's quite a bit of information. Why does my personal financial information matter? Well, your ability to be able to support the business if needed, right? And so we're going to look at your explained debt service. We're going to look at the business debt service, and then we're going to look at your personal debt service, and then we're going to add them together, and we call that your global debt service. And in the example that we gave, we're going to want all those to be in line with the numbers that we're looking for. The example that I gave, for that specific lending institution, the example that I gave was 1.3 was an acceptable cash flow, right? Was saying that you're cash flowing. We're going to want that for your business debt service, your personal debt service, and your global debt service. Now, if one of them's kind of out of whack, like if your personal debt service is not quite at 1.3, but your business is like 1.5, and global you're at 1.3 or higher, we still be able to make that deal work. But if your business is really, really low, it's going to be challenging. And so, so your ability to be able to support the business if needed, that's where your personal financial information is key. Obviously, showing your ability to be able to pay your current personal living expenses, and I already talked about debt service too. And then how have you handled your personal finances? This is your credit, right? I know y'all talked about this last week too with Maria with Live Fund, but your personal credit, it matters, and it matters a lot. And that's out of the 5 C's, that's your character, right? So how have you handled how you handle your personal finances is how we look at how you're going to be paying this back. So example would be, I'll give you a couple examples. If you have very challenged credit, where you have slow pays, collection items, and charge-offs, right? You are showing that you don't understand how to handle debt. You don't understand how to handle credit. You don't understand how to handle debt. So we're gonna look at that when you're trying to get a business loan, and that's how we're gonna look at you're gonna be paying us back, how you've handled your personal credit. So, and we don't want to be on that list of not getting paid back and not paid back on time. On the opposite side, if you have very positive credit, you have a long, good history of making your payments on time, your balance and limit ratios are in line, according to how we're looking at it, then that's a strength to your complete loan package. That's a strength to your deal. It's not the only factor, but it is a factor, and so that's a strength to your loan request. So how you handle your personal finances, it matters a lot. Here on this slide, we talk about the difference between a business line of credit versus a business term loan. I'll give some examples too as well, so it'll make a little bit more sense and pop for you. So a line of credit is typically for short-term financing, short-term needs. Short-term definition being 12 months or less. or a year or less of a need. It's typically reusable after it's been paid back. Um, and a lot of times there are interest only payments, payment options. And so a lot of times with these lines of credit, you have the interest only payment options. There are some lenders that you may not have that option, but a big portion of your minimum, and we're talking about the minimum monthly payment, the big portion of the minimum monthly payment is going to be interest, but there may be a small portion that's principal too as well for some lenders. Every lender is a little different, but that's the definition of a line of credit. Um, so as an example, how you would use a line of credit and when you would ask for a line of credit, let's say as an example, you're a construction company and you just got this new contract that you're trying to service. And so with this new contract that you're trying to service, you're having to purchase the supplies and materials up front. You're having to pay your people up front to be able to provide the work and be able to service the contract. I mean, they're probably not going to work for free, right? They're probably going to want to get paid. You're going to be able to. So in order to be able to supply that, you would need a line of credit instead of using all your own funds, or maybe you can use a portion of your funds and then a portion for the line from the line of credit. So let's say in this example, you were needing $40,000 to be able to service this contract. And this contract's a 90-day contract. You don't get paid till after the 90 days. And so let's say you've got a line of credit for 60,000, that's your limit. You pull 40,000 from the line of credit, buy your supplies and materials, uh, pay your contractors or employees or whatever to be able to service the contract. Once you've completed the work, right after the 90 days, now you get paid. Let's say you get paid $60,000. You would take 40,000 of the $60,000, pay back the line of credit, and then take the 20,000 and be able to put in like a business savings account. And then now that you pay back the business line of credit, now it's a zero balance. You got it available for you to be able to use again and go get that other contract. That's how you're supposed to use a line of credit. And again, you saw in that example, that's less than a year, less than 12 months. Um, Business term loan. So on a business term loan, it's usually for a specific use, like you're buying a building, buying equipment, buying a business vehicle. That's usually when you're going to use a term loan. A term loan is going to be usually for a specific term. It may be for 5 years and then have a fixed interest rate for that whole 5 years. Or maybe, you're doing a commercial building, it's a 15-year term, fixed rate for that 15 years. That's really the difference between a business term loan and a business line of credit. It's usually for term loans, it's usually for a specific purpose. And that determines the collateral that's being used too for your loan structure. So some of the frequently asked questions that we get: do I need a business plan? I think I answered that earlier. Yes, you do, and you really need it for yourself. But yeah, as a lender, yeah, we're going to ask for that business plan. There's things that we're going to want in that business plan to be able to see. I would say if you don't have a business plan, when you say, "Well, I got it in my head," you need to have it in writing. It's not good enough to have it in your head. Yeah, have it in writing. And if you need help with that, there are organizations that can help with that, like SCORE or SBDC, the Small Business Development Centers. Um, they can help for free, actually, with business plans. They're not going to do the work for you. You're going to have to put the work in, but they have templates that you can use, and they can actually help you with doing some of the research, like what price points are you supposed to be, maybe setting your product or service at, based off of the industry average and the market that you're in. So that way you're setting your price points at the right place. That's very, very important. Why is it? I'll go to the next bullet point. Why is it hard to get a loan for startups? I think I kind of hinted at this a little bit earlier, but if you're a startup business, you're not generating any revenue. You haven't generated any revenue to show that you have the ability to be able to pay us back, right? And typically, what a lot of startup businesses, they don't have a lot of collateral, right? You're probably trying to get collateral, but you don't have, so you're not generating any revenue to show that you have the ability to pay us back. You're also not having you don't have any collateral, enough collateral to be able to provide us with the comfort, um, to show that that's a secondary form of repayment. So if you go out of business, right? How are we going to get paid back? If there's not enough sufficient collateral there, we got a shortfall. Um, and so that's typically why we get SBA involved as lenders. So, and I'll explain that a little bit here in a little bit, but that's usually why it's hard for startup businesses to get lending or get funds because there's no revenue that they've generated and there's not very much collateral, which is why you have to have an alternative source of income, i.e., full-time job, part-time job, or if you have another business that's providing income that can support the debt request or the loan request, the line of credit request that you're asking for, or let's say it's you and another partner, you're doing the day-to-day operations full-time of the business and your partner actually has a full-time job. Your partner's income, as long as the income is enough to be able to support his or her personal debt service and also the business debt service, the new business debt service that you're trying to take on, the new loan or line of credit, we can look at that, right? Because that's what we're looking at, the global debt service uh, regarding the capacity on that. Next bullet point, why do I need to personally guarantee? Well, there's a lot of different reasons, but typically if you're going to typically you're going to ask for a business loan, you're going to have to personally guarantee. So what that's telling us is it provides us comfort again as lenders. It minimizes our risk. We don't want to take all the risks, right? If you're not willing to personally guarantee, that's a red flag to a lender. Hey, you don't believe in yourself? Like, why should we take all the risk when you're not willing to? Personally guaranteeing means if for some reason your business goes out of business, you have a loan with this, your business has a loan with this, and for some reason you go out of business, you're saying I'm personally liable to make sure that y'all get paid back. That's what personally guaranteed is. And when a small business owner, there's different ways to ask that question too as well. Well, at one point in time, another way to ask that question, at one point in time, can my business just stand on its own? It makes us nervous as lenders when business owners say that because it doesn't seem like you believe in yourself. Or what's on your, what's there that you don't want us to know about, like personal credit. It's a question. Doesn't mean there's something there, but that's kind of what a lender is thinking when you say those kind of things. So hopefully that answered that question. What is the SBA and does the SBA make? So the SBA is a Small Business Administration. Does the SBA make loans? They typically do not make loans, but in certain situations, like disaster situations, they do, like the economic injury and disaster loan, like when the pandemic hit, uh, when Hurricane Harvey hit, right? There's disaster loans that they provide, that the SBA provides, but they typically do not offer loans. They typically back loans, and they back the loan for the lender. So usually a lender is going to try to do a deal conventionally first, but if we don't feel comfort for different reasons, maybe there's a shortfall in the value of the collateral assets that are being used versus the loan or line of credit ask, that's when we'll look to try to get SBA involved. That's one example. Or maybe on a startup business, there's a lot of startup businesses go out of business, right? So in order for us to feel comfortable to minimize our risk, we'll get SBA involved. The SBA will guarantee the lender up to a certain percentage of the guaranteed loan amount if the business goes out of business, right? So that's where that comfort comes in. That's why, as lenders, we get SBA involved. That's not something that the small business owner needs to kind of come up with and try to get. Hey, I need an SBA loan, right? It's something that we come up with as the lending institutions to make us feel comfortable about trying to entertain the deal. There are a couple of different SBA programs. I know there's a lot of different SBA programs, but a couple of the big ones that are used are SBA 7A, SBA 7A Community Advantage, and then SBA 504. So SBA 7A Community Advantage is typically for startup businesses, right? They need money for startup costs or equipment or working capital, those kind of things. And then 504 is typically for commercial real estate, like if you're buying a commercial building or if you're getting a new construction of a commercial building, and then money for heavy machinery. That's usually for a 504. Those are pretty much the typical uses. There may be one other that I'm missing, but those are the typical uses for SBA. So hopefully that explained about SBA. So in summation, I'd say be prepared to provide all the documentation that's being requested. You know, keep in mind there may be additional, you know, you'll probably have a initial checklist that the lender sends to you as far as the documentation that needs to be provided. Be prepared to receive additional emails for additional documentation because it's going to depend on the strength of your loan request. You know, it'll depend on your loan structure as far as documentation wise too as well. Um, Make sure that you're providing the documentation in an accurate and timely manner. You know, if it's going to take you months to be able to get the documentation to the lender, you're not ready yet. You need to, it's better for you to wait until you're ready and you have most of the documentation or all the documentation readily available, you know, when you're applying for that loan or line of credit request. Um, you know, and then make sure it's accurate, right? Be prepared to answer questions about your loan requests, including the tough questions. You know, like the example, how did the pandemic specifically affect you? How did this Texas snowstorm specifically affect you? Those are examples of be prepared to answer those questions and you know, be real, be truthful on those questions. And you know, I would say this is a good time to probably say this as the lending institution, whatever lender that you're going through, they need to know everything. They need to know the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. They're going to find out anyway. So you might as well go ahead and tell them. And so that way they can have a clearer picture of your complete loan package and the loan structure. So that way they can put a write up, if you will, together where all the strengths of your loan request, all the weaknesses of your loan request, and try to mitigate those weaknesses so everybody feels comfortable about moving forward and entertaining the deal. And that includes you as the small business owner, the customer. Make sure you utilize your local resources to help build your plan, such as score.org, SBA.gov. There's also the Small Business Development Centers. So SCORE and SBDC, Small Business Development Centers, they're actually a part of SBA. They're funded by the SBA. And so the people who are actually working for SCORE and SBDC, a lot of them are volunteers. And so they're doing it out of the kindness of their heart because they really want to share and help small businesses grow and grow our communities. You know, you can get that mentor. I would suggest getting a mentor or a couple of mentors that are whatever industry that you're in, that are in your industry to be able to help you be very successful. A lot of those mentors have they're either running their own businesses, right, successfully, or they've actually run a business or their own businesses successfully in the past. And so utilize them. Their mentorship is free to be able to help. And so always use a competent accountant who specializes in business taxes. So this is where I would say you have to have your team of people. You got to have that lender or that banker. You got to have that insurance agent, if you will. And you got to have that tax advisor or tax accountant or CPA. And all of them should be trying to meet your goals in your business to try to actually make sure that you're successful. You know, I would say interview them. You know, don't just go with the first one that you see. Interview them. If you don't like the personality, go with somebody else. Right? It's your business. You're in control. You know, make sure that you choose somebody that you're going to be able to work with, and that's going to care for your situation and help you try to meet your business goals. So at this point in time, I'd like to just thank everybody for allowing me this opportunity to be able to share this information with you. Um, Again, my name is Tim Coates, and I'd like to open it up for questions now.
Tim, thank you so much. And thank you for generously sharing your information as well. You guys, if you have sort of stepped away from the screen for a minute, he did leave his email on there. So that was kind. And so many of our speakers do that. And we just got a comment from somebody saying, thank you so much for the presentation. It was great information. So you guys, this is the time where, again, it may be something, you may have a question that's kind of like inside of you and you're thinking, I don't know if he can answer it. May as well ask, right? It doesn't hurt to ask. You can even be completely hidden behind your computer screen. So don't be shy about asking a question that maybe is more of a general question or maybe something more specific. There's no question that's too simple or too small. And I will kick things off by asking you about this. This was earlier on in the presentation. So if you guys hopped on late, you might have missed this part, but we were asking, we're saying you have to give an example of, or you have to say a specific purpose for the loan funds, right? You have to
Yes.
indicate this is exactly why I want to use them. Can you give some examples that would really make sense for that?
Yeah, I think a good one would be, a lot of times we'll get small business owners that will say, well, I need money for working capital. That's not specific enough. We need to know specifically how are you using that money? How are you going to use it? So let's say, for instance, you need $100,000 for working capital. So of that working capital, what is the breakdown? Well, I need, 50,000 of working capital to be used for payroll to be able to hire 6 people and pay them for 6 months. I need the other 50,000 to be able to actually purchase supplies and materials. That's what we're looking for on the working capital side. Now, the specific purpose sometimes is pretty easy. Like if you're purchasing a commercial building, that's the purpose. The purpose is purchasing the building. If you're purchasing equipment, that's the purpose purchasing the equipment. Does that explain?
Yeah, it really, yes, it really does. And I think that it's like, yeah, because we know our own lives so specifically, right? And so we think, well, obviously, I've got my smoothie business. I need smoothie ingredients, or
Right,
whether
right,
the thing is, but whoever's doing the loan, they know business, but they may not know your business. So you have to explain it. It seems
right,
like sort of, you know, pretty in a pretty detailed way in order to be successful.
right.
N- Now, this is another one, and probably for your industry, this probably seems like such a simple question, but you guys, I'm just giving an example of ask the simple questions while you have them. When you say a loan is reusable, can you explain what exactly that means?
Yeah, that's a line of credit. So we in the lender terms, we say rinse and repeat, right? And so like on a line of credit, let's say you had I think the example that I gave was you have a $60,000 limit on the line of credit, and you use 40,000 of it to be able to pay your people and then be able to purchase the supplies and materials to be able to service the contract. And so once you let's say once you've serviced that contract and you got the money back, say you got $60,000 back in that example, 40,000 of it, because remember your balance was $40,000 on line of credit. You use the 40,000 from the line of credit so that you can service the contract. Once you're completed with the contract, you take the 40,000, pay back the line of credit, and now it's at a zero balance for the line of credit. And it's available for you to now you've got the whole $60,000 balance to be able to use for whatever to go get another contract. That's what we mean it's reusable on a line of credit. A loan is not typically reusable. A loan is for that specific term. Once that loan is done, you got to go and apply and get another loan. Does that make sense?
It feels like a giant credit card, but I know it's
Yeah,
not.
it's revolving credit. It's revolving
Yeah.
credit. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. You don't
Okay.
get a card, but yeah.
But it feels like that idea where you need to pay it
Yes.
off, right? And if you do, you can use it again. And
Exactly.
so it feels like that for businesses. Now, we have
Exactly.
to know too, you've been in the financial services industry for 20 years. How did you get into it?
Well, it's funny. Actually, right out of college, my first job, uh, I actually worked in the 401k department with Fidelity Investments. So I actually had a friend, my friend's father worked there, so I kind of had a hookup to be able to get in, honestly. So before I even graduated college, I already knew I had a job at Fidelity Investments. So I worked there for a couple of years with Fidelity, and then I became a financial advisor. So this is kind of my prior life, I guess. I was a financial advisor, so I did investments and retirement planning and everything, and sold insurance. And then I got into banking. Um, my first banking job was with Wachovia Bank. I don't know if y'all remember Wachovia, but I've worked there as a personal bank. I've worked as a personal banker. I've worked as a branch manager. I've worked as a what we call a partnership banking officer, or basically I would go out to different businesses and talk to their employees and open accounts and try to bring the bank actually to the employees that could not get off work to go to the bank. So I did that, and then also obviously I've been a commercial lender too as well. So and then now my role right now, I go out and I train small business owners on how to get funding and financing, and we typically partner with Score, right? Score partners with us typically on a lot of our training programs. But we just do, a lot of times we'll just do things like this or access to capital classes, um, just to be able to share the information because I think it's highly needed in all of our communities.
Well, Tim, you were learning about 401ks while the rest of us were in that first job out of college still figuring out, oh, wait, so I'm supposed to put even more money away to a thing, even though I'm not making very much. So you're in a better spot now because you knew.
Yes, yes, I've been blessed. I've been blessed.
And where were you all those days when we were all at work? And it's so true, couldn't get to a bank. So you have you have provided many, many services. Can you explain what SCORE is for people who aren't familiar?
Yeah, SCORE is a nonprofit organization. Again, they're part of the SBA, funded by the SBA. We have a lot of volunteers, several advisors. Again, you can go to their website, score.org, but they typically have, different chat. Like there's a Dallas chapter, there's a Fort Worth chapter, there's a Houston chapter. You can typically find them either in business assistance centers, or a lot of times they're in community colleges. But they provide mentorship to small business owners. I think originally they were originally set up for veterans, to help out veterans, if I can remember correctly, with small business, to help educate, to help them with their small business for veterans. But now it's opened up to everybody. And so they provide mentors, whether it be one mentor or several mentors. They also help with business plans. They also help, like I said, with the price points. They can also help find a lender for you too as well. A lot of times because they have those relationships, like they have the relationships with Prosperity Bank, but we're not the only bank or funding institution that they have relationships with. So it's a good place for, if you're a small business owner and you're just trying to get started, like maybe you have an idea or you have it's something that you're starting to do, but it's kind of like a hobby, but you want to turn it into a profitable business. That is a great place to start. Is go to score.org, find kind of like your local office, set up an appointment with an advisor, and maybe you'll have a mentor or mentors from then on. They can help you not only just try to get that business loan, but through your whole business life, so you can be successful. So hopefully that explains enough information about school.
What kind of interest rate range are we talking about for those types of loans?
There's a lot of different ones, but I would say for every lender is different, but because they have different benchmarks, a lot of lenders use the prime rate kind of as a benchmark. So it's usually prime plus a spread, right? It may be prime, if you're looking at a bank, typically the bank is going to be lower than a CDFI, right? Like a Live Fund or a People Fund, or a William and Junior CDC or BCL of Texas. There's a lot of CDFIs, but usually you're going to try to go to the bank first because usually we're going to have better terms if it's a good fit. But then if for some reason we're not a good fit, then you go to them, and usually their terms are not going to be as favorable. Um, I know some of them use prime also plus a spread. Their spread must be maybe higher than ours, but a lot of times it'll be like prime plus like two or something like that, or prime plus one and a quarter. It just really just depends on the deal. That's something in commercial lending where our answer is a lot of times it really depends, because it does. Because every person's different, every business is different, every loan structure is different. But usually we'll start at prime plus a spread, right? Hopefully that answers it. And the prime rate just went up. It's Fed,
I know. That's
so
why
it
I
just
was
went
thinking
up. It's
of it.
five and a half. It's five and a
Yeah.
half now. Is the prime rate.
So for example, like it might be okay, so we're at 5.5, might be then 7.5,
It could be seven, seven
dep-
and a half. Yeah, I mean,
depending.
it depends on it. Could be six, could be six and a half, could be six,
Sure.
0.75.
It's just not going to be 4.
No, it's not. It's not gonna happen. Not right now. Not right. Not at this time. So because it wouldn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's a good point. But in certain situations, like I said, it depends on the collateral too. So if it's a building, if it's real estate, you're probably going to have a better rate versus maybe if it's equipment or working capital, right? Um, Working capital type of line, or a line of credit versus a loan. So it really just depends, and it depends on the strength of the loan package too.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. What is the smallest loan that you guys do, and what is the largest?
I would say largest. I don't know if there's a. It really again depends on the deal. I mean, if there's $100 million deals out Smallest, I've done a deal at, I mean, I think we typically like to see maybe 5,000, 10,000 minimum, somewhere around there is what we like to see from a minimum standpoint. But again, it kind of depends on the deal too as well. So I've done a deal in the past with previous. It really depends on the lender too. Like if you go to a CDFI, they may be willing to go lower, right? Um, but I've done a deal that was $1,000, like $1,000 line of credit in the past for a previous lender. So it really kind of just depends. But usually as far as from a limit standpoint, the loan structure can kind of determine the limit. The capacity obviously is going to determine the limit. Can you cash flow the deal? But from a collateral standpoint, the collateral is going to also be key as far as on the limit of your ask, if you will, what we can go to. But yeah, I mean, there's $100 million deals out there all the time. I can say, it depends on if we feel comfortable to as well. We may partner with another bank, be like, we don't want to take all the risk when we spread this thing out, right? you know, so and that happens all, and we'll partner with other banks. We'll partner with CDFIs too as well. So
Okay, that's really helpful. It's interesting because I was thinking about that, wondering, uh yeah, like how big can it be? How big of a loan, could a group do? It sounds like it's somewhat unlimited, depending
it
on the
just depends on
bank.
yeah, the risk that we want to take, that we're willing to take.
Yeah, and we did Lyft Fund. If I remember correctly, they were saying their lowest was $500, and so that was welcome news because some people are thinking, oh, I just need a little bit, to kind of get started, or maybe they start with a little bit and start establishing a relationship or establishing some credit. Is that something that would be advisable if somebody's coming into this situation with not ideal credit, and so they're not able to get as much to kind of start and then prove themselves?
That's yeah, exactly. I would say first work on your credit. Get somebody to help you with your credit. But while you're doing that, if you can go through, if somebody can help you, if you find somebody that's willing to help you, work on your credit, but start small and then show that you have the ability to be able to pay them back and pay them back on time. And then later on, maybe 6 months, a year, 24 months, whatever, you can get that increase actually in the line of credit, or you just ask for a different type of request. Maybe you're at that point in time where you can ask for a billing, right? So it's just you just start building up. Yes, I would say, let's say for instance, I'll kind of piggyback off of what we're talking about, but sometimes we'll have small business owners that come in and say, "Hey, I want that line of credit for 100,000," but our just maybe based on certain things as far as on the structure and the loan structure of the loan request and the strength of the loan request or weakness of the loan request, our underwriting team or our approvers may say, I don't feel comfortable with 100,000. Maybe we'll do 50,000. I would say take it, right? Take the 50,000 and make it work and try to, like you said, show that you have the ability to be able to pay back and pay back on time and you understand how to handle that credit. And then later on, maybe when you've shown that after so much time, you can get that increase actually on the line of credit and ask for the increase. Now, obviously, you got to have the capacity to show that you have the ability to be able to pay that back. But yeah, now you've built that relationship with that lender. You've shown that you know how to handle debt.
That's true. Proving ourselves. So we just keep proving ourselves, right?
Yes,
And just keep continuing on. And if I'm understanding correctly, it's like back to my smoothie shop example. It would be not as attractive to the bank to get like my old blenders if my business didn't work as it would be attractive for me if I had invested in a property or something that's easy for them to acquire and resell. Am I understanding that
that,
accurately?
yeah, that is correct. I mean, that's the last thing we want that any of us want. We all have a lot of the same goals in mind. The last thing we want is the small business owner to go out of business, right? We don't want that. We want to make sure that you're profitable and that you're doing well, as the small business owner wants that too as well. And so, we want to make sure that you're operating profitably so that you pay us back from your just regular operating profits, right? Regular operating income. That's what we want. But we always have to have that security blanket of that collateral, right, to make us feel comfortable. And, from a lending institution, we can't really do anything with blenders, right? So I don't know what we can do with blenders, but I mean, we're still going to take it as collateral, but it's not something. It's not. it's not the most appeasing collateral. We typically like tangible collateral, stuff we can see, touch, and feel, like the commercial buildings, like business equipment, like a business vehicle. We also like liquid collateral, like a savings account or a CD, or even some stocks. It depends on the stock, but some stocks, and then also accounts receivable. I think I was trying to explain that. A good accounts receivable, like we have accounts receivable. You have customers paying on terms. I'll give an example. Let's say you have 10 customers paying on terms, but one of those customers generates 90% of the revenue. That may not be the best piece of collateral from an accounts receivable standpoint, because you lose that one customer, you may have just gone out of business. Versus if you have the same 10 customers and they're all 10%, now each one of them 10% of the total revenue. You lose that one customer, you still have 90% of the revenue. That's obviously a better piece of collateral to kind of use. Obviously, assuming that they're all paying on time. Now, if they're not paying on time, if they're consistently not paying on time, it's not a good piece of collateral for us to use because they're not paying on
Uh,
time.
of course. Yeah. You don't want to get into that.
Right.
Tell me this, what would be a more desirable scenario for the bank? Somebody who had never had a business before, but had great personal credit, or somebody who had done a few businesses, paid things off, was growing, but actually didn't have that great of credit.
It depends, right?
Yeah,
So
I'm
it
sure. Yeah.
depends on what you mean by how not that great a credit. We're going to want the experience. That's a big thing. Um, that's a big thing, but credit's a big thing too as well. So like if you say if the credit is not that good a credit, where maybe something happened in the past, let's say 5 years ago or whatever, they for some reason they had a collection item, but they had a collection item because they couldn't work, because they were in the hospital or whatever, so they couldn't work and generate any income. That's why that collection item actually happened. But they paid the collection item, a couple of years ago, but that collection item is still affecting their credit score. But they don't have any other charge-offs or slow pays or collection items. Um, that still may be a deal that we can do. We just have to explain what happened. Why did that happen? Right? But if they have current slow pays, current collection items, and current charge-offs, or either of those things, that's going to make it very challenging to get done, because again, we don't want to be on that list and not getting paid back and not getting paid back on time. If you have very little experience or no experience in the business that you're trying to start, the I would from the advice that I would give is, hey, you might want to start some other kind of business that you have experience in, that you understand, because you don't know what you don't know when you don't have the experience in that business. Or get a partner that has the experience that you trust, obviously, that can actually shore up the experience need for your complete loan package, and then you're just kind of bringing to the table the credit, the maybe capital injection, if you will,
Mhm.
and then the capacity. We see that all the time. Like if you're gonna be partnering with somebody, obviously you got to make sure you trust them, but they got to be bringing something to the table, right? From a complete business package, if you will, business structure. So that just because you don't have the experience, but if you have a partner that has the experience,
Yeah.
right, and they're going to be helping the day-to-day operations or running it, that it could work, right?
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, I know that was a loaded answer.
No, no, no. I mean, listen, I'm the one asking the loaded questions over here, just out of my own curiosity and based on some comments from people. Is prosperity in other states as well?
We're in Texas and Oklahoma. That's our footprint.
Texas and Oklahoma. Okay, great. And then do banks in general, we'll probably wrap up with this, have a community lending outreach program? Or is that something that is that typical for banks in your experience?
I'd say a lot of banks do have it. I can't speak for all banks, but I know a lot of banks do actually have like they have typically a community development officer, and then they'll have, they may have lenders who are specifically, I know really now too as well. It's kind of there's been a lot of people in the market actually uh, showing that they're focused on trying to help women and minority owned businesses, like
Yeah.
specifically trying to go into those to those areas and help those type of businesses with lending. And so I can't say every bank has it, but there are quite a bit of banks that are I think showing that they're willing to help that market.
I have noticed that as well. Yeah, that it didn't seem to be before that there was much outreach, and now thankfully there is, which seems to be
Yes,
a beautiful thing.
and we need more. We need more. Right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Tim, thank you so much. You have been so helpful. Tell everybody once again the topic for next week because we're looking forward to that.
Yes. Thank you all for listening to as well. So the topic for next week, we're going to be covering completing a application, going through the whole application, and we're going to be looking at completing a personal financial statement and going through the details of each question, kind of why we're asking the question. I think it'll make a little bit more sense when we're going through that from if you were actually part of this presentation. I think it's gonna make more sense on why we're asking the questions that we're
Mhm.
asking on the application, which will help you be able to fill it out completely and accurately.
That's excellent. Tim, thank you so much for your time today. So, you guys, if you have somebody who is a friend who watches with you, let them know that this week's session will be up via replay on Sarah's YouTube channel, which is linked in the comments by Wednesday. So, if they wanted to come to part two, they could watch it Wednesday and then come back for part two on Thursday, or watch it Thursday morning, then come directly to this. Also, this replay will be up for you if there's things that you didn't get to take a note on, or you think, gosh, I need to go back to the beginning and watch that, or you zoned out, or whatever the case may be. It will be on YouTube. Not that anyone would ever zone out on Tim. Never. Thank you all for hanging with us. This has been another wonderful session. Tim, thank you so much for your time. And don't forget in the chat, you guys, there's more information on Sarah's programs. We'll see you next week, everybody. Bye bye.
So much.